And now, let's join Maggie Linton on SiriusXM Urban View, Channel 110.
Welcome back. April is National Child Abuse Month. We're going to devote the next hour to why this happens and finding solutions to prevent child abuse from happening. Leading the discussion is Jinnie Cristerna. She is a licensed clinical social worker, psycho and hypnotherapist, based in Chicago. Jinnie is affectionately known as the High Achievers Therapist and is a therapist featured in Jet Magazine and on Jet.com. Welcome, Jinnie.
Hi, how are you, Maggie?
I am just doing fine. I am so glad to have you on because so often I have said children do not choose who their parents are, and they come up on such a bad end of the stick, don't they?
They do, and it's really unfortunate. So when they set aside April as being Child Abuse Awareness Month, I was very, very happy because this gives us an opportunity to really talk about what the warning signs are, because you never know who needs to hear, and you never know the life that you might save. So thank you so much for allowing us to talk about this. This is such a very important topic.
Well, I think it's so important because kids from the very earliest ages are victims, and because they need to have someone that's there to protect them. And we're not just talking about rape or incest. We're talking about sometimes as early as shaken baby syndrome, which some parents may do to try and quiet their child.
Exactly. This is something that is happening across culture, across ethnicity, across race. This is really a parenting issue that we need to address, especially with the rash of unfortunate incidents that happened over the last several weeks. With, children murdered, noses bitten off, things like that. We definitely need to talk about it because they are victims.
So much of it starts with frustration from maybe not having as much or as much control as you need when you're dealing with a child.
Yes. One of the things, Maggie, that comes up a lot is emotional regulation. And as a parent, if you're unable to manage your own emotions, especially emotions around frustration, which we, tend to experience a lot of as a parent, because that's what happens, when you're a parent. You get frustrated. You're not sure how to communicate with your child. You're unsure, what your child is wanting. And trying to figure that out can be frustrating in and of itself. So if you as a parent are unaware of how to deal with that, and if you've not been taught how to manage your disappointment and your frustration, chances are you're going to react to it. And the horrible position for any parent to be in is reacting to that emotion with a child.
You did a wonderful article a couple of weeks ago on Jet.com about learning the intricacies of parenting, because you don't just wake up one day and know how to parent properly.
Right. And, one of the things, one of the things that I do get very excited about when I write for Jet Magazine, the website is jetmag.com, the Moment of Clarity blog really speaks to, a number of issues. And the one that you're referring to from a couple of weeks ago is about, some basic signs and things that parents should know and or learn when it comes to having children, when it comes to parenting children, so that way their child is safe, the parent is growing and developing and able to enjoy parenthood, because parenthood should actually also be very, very rewarding, and it should help you feel good as a person. So that's something that a lot of parents are unfortunately unable to experience at this time. But hopefully, they'll grow into that.
Right. And way too often what they don't realize is they're not just raising children, they're raising people who will become adults. They're raising adults to fit into the world.
Absolutely. And one of the things, Maggie, that you hit on that I spoke about is looking at the family that your partner comes from and that you come from as a parent, because a lot of what we learn about how to parent comes from how we were parented. Were we sheltered? Were we criticized? Were we abused ourselves? Those things play a very big role in how we as adults become parents and in turn parent our children.
Let's begin with some of you had 10 rules that were just so good. And folks, if you have any questions or comments, abused as a child, whatever, you can definitely call in and give us your comments or questions. The number is 866-801-8255. Once again, 866-801-8255. And even before we start on these, so often when children, in almost all cases, when children are abused as children, they also have difficulty with relationships as they get older.
Oh, absolutely. You know, when they are in relationships with other adults, that is, you know, one of those spaces. It's kind of like a fork in the road. You know, there's been comedians who talk about, you know, when we meet people to date, you know, we meet their representatives. We don't necessarily meet the real person until you've been in that relationship with them for quite some time. So here's the issue. When we're in relationships with our significant others, we start to see the areas that need development, where, you know, there may be some issues where there are definitely some strengths. So we see all of them, but it usually unfolds over time. And this is the reason why you hear a lot of experts, including myself, you hear a lot of old, wise, you know, tales and you know, your elders talking about don't rush into those, you know, any relationship quickly, because it takes time before you see what is really underneath the surface of your partner. So intimate relationships really bring out the real person.
Right. And in those, since we're here right now, in those intimate relationships, what is the best way to introduce your children to the person that you're starting to get serious about?
Oh, that is a fantastic question, Maggie. I'm so excited that you asked that. So for those of you who are thinking about introducing someone to your child, grab a pen and paper, take down some notes, because there's definitely a method to the madness, if you will. You know, a lot of people will talk about, you know, I like this person and this person is going to be in my life, and so hence I will introduce that person to my child, and my child will have to deal with it. If anything I can tell you, that is absolutely the worst way to introduce someone to your child. So if you don't listen to or remember anything I say, remember that. Just because you want that person in your life doesn't mean that your child has to or will accept that person, male or female. Now, with that said, the best way to introduce someone is once you've decided whether or not you are really serious about this person and have feelings for this person, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. Is this person the kind of person that I really want to be around my child? Is this person someone who can be there for the long haul? And that's something that a lot of parents, especially when they're dating, they don't really think about. They hope that they'll be there for the long haul, and they'll have children as young as a year or 5 years old or 10 or 12 years old. But if you're not sure about where that relationship is going, you probably shouldn't be introducing that person to your child anyway.
Go ahead. Go ahead. What I was going to say, just finding out who you two are first before you even bring in the dynamics of the children. As a person, again, I just said last hour, I'm a person who was introduced into that type of thing because my husband's first wife passed away, but before she passed away, they were divorced. And learning how to know those three kids was also very important.
Exactly. And as you decide, okay, say you and your partner say this is something we want to do for the long haul, then that's when you two start to talk about, well, how should we introduce you to the rest of the children? How should we introduce you? What's the best way? Because each way is going to be a little unique. The general, the gist of it is going to be the same, which is the parent talks with their child about what if mommy started dating, or if the child already knows mom is dating, you know, how would you feel about meeting the person that I'm dating? And having a conversation with the kid, not so much an adult conversation with a 1-year-old or 5-year-old, but you would definitely need to gauge if that child is even open to receiving someone in the home and sharing their mother or their father with another person. Because for the kid, that may not be something that they're ready to do for whatever reason. So being able to understand where your child is at when it comes to you dating and bringing someone in the home is extremely important. The other thing that I do tell parents is that when you do decide to bring the child to, your partner, to meet your child, you want to notice how your child responds to that person. One of the things that happen a lot, and I used to work for DCFS, one of their agencies, in order to keep children safe, and we unfortunately had to remove some children out of the home and find, placements for them, is I often noticed that children would pick up on things that their parent would miss because they're so involved in the situation. The red flags that were there, the parent completely missed them. Mm-hmm. So you really want to look at your kid, because kids really don't know how to judge just yet, especially the younger ones. They can sense things that as adults we've defended ourselves against psychologically, we rationalize away. So you really want to make sure that your child is a part of that process. And if your child says no, for whatever reason, that relationship either needs to end or be put on hold until you address, what's going on with your child. I've heard one of my friends actually just had this horrible situation where his ex-wife met someone on the internet, 6 months later moved him in, and didn't tell the daughter until after he was moved in.
Wow. And that's disrespecting your child. And
she just doesn't get it even now that that's really inappropriate, and that's just setting up the perfect storm. So, it's one of those things where the child is just key, because we don't want to have another story on the news about something happening to a child because a parent is in need of having their own personal needs met, which leads me to another point, Maggie. Sometimes when you're a single parent, you have to come to the realization that you may not be able to date. Not until things are okay. And that doesn't mean your child controls your life. It just means that you can't bring everyone into your life, not when you become a parent. There's a level of responsibility and obligation that you have as a parent to protect your child that comes before your personal and physical needs.
Right. Once again, we're talking with licensed clinical social worker, psycho and hypnotherapist Jinnie Cristerna, and we have a call from Quentin in Virginia. Go ahead, Quentin.
Yeah, I had this question concerning disciplining both of your children and parents agreeing with the discipline. Like, sometimes parents feel one way. One parent feels one way about one thing, another parent feels another, as like, oh, this wasn't a big deal. This is a big deal, and we do need to discipline them. And how do parents kind of take care of those situations without, one, getting it to a point where you're resenting each other, and two, having an argument in front of the kids?
Oh, that, Clinton, is an excellent question, and I'm very glad that you asked that. I used to teach and create parenting classes, and something that comes up a lot is co-parenting, and that's not just with someone that you're dating, but also with both biological parents.
Amen.
Right? So we'll see that they have very different parenting styles, and what we'll also notice is that they both believe they're right in how they want to parent their child. This is where, issues between parents, whether they're biological parents or a blended family, these things need to be worked out in advance. What you'll notice is that parents who come from families that believed in corporal punishment, that believed in, timeout or whatever the case may be, that's what they tend to use. So the issue becomes, why is it that you believe this is going to be the most effective way to discipline our children? Because even if it's a blended family, Maggie, that is still the stepfather, the stepmother, and they still hold a parenting role in that home. Here's where the issue comes in, Clinton. If for whatever reason you feel like your way is better because that's how you were raised and you turned out okay, that in and of itself is a problem.
Okay.
Because what I tell people is that, well, who's to say that you're okay, right?
Yeah.
That's all subjective. Just like, I grew up and, we grew up in the time of extension cords and, all kind of switches. And if they get really creative, they soak the switches in water and then braid it. And all kind of things that, and looking back, that was a bit much, right? So what I do say to parents, Quentin, is, Maggie, go and talk with someone objective and really see what's causing you to feel like this is the best way? Because sometimes that's just the only way that we know. And so it doesn't mean it's the best way.
Right. And not only that, when it becomes to, that's something you should talk about before you have the children or when they're at a very early age so that you're on the same plate when you finally, your kids get of the age where they really are trying to team one against the other, because that happens. And we see it happen all the time. And making sure you're on the same plate. Yeah.
Right. And it's normal for kids to do that. And so what I tell parents, even, when they come in now and they're frustrated with their kids, I'm like, okay, your kid's normal. You're the one that's struggling.
Yeah.
Right? So kids, what they do is they're supposed to push the envelope. They're supposed to push your button. If you told me you had a 16-year-old in your home who wasn't getting on your nerves and making you feel like, this is karma coming back for all the horrible things you've done to your parent, I would wonder what's wrong with your kid, because that's just what they do. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be defiant. They're finding their space. It's us as parents, when we are reacting to our children, that's us. That's us feeling like we don't have control and we don't know how to get it other than by force.
Right. We got a call from Nathan in California. Go ahead, Nathan. Go ahead,
Hello?
Nathan. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I love the subject because I've been through it. Everything she said, I've been through it. My mother raised 3 boys in New York and the Bronx, and she we got hit with the iron cord. I got the worst because I was the baddest at the time. Hit with the iron cord, hot water in the head, all that stuff. But I feel at the time, with raising 3 boys, she had to do shit to do. And right now I'm doing good. We all three of us, plus 6 of us now. She had 3 girls after that. And then she got the man from cancer, manpower. I was the mama's boy, so when the man comes, she look at me to see if I approve, because I used to be with her all the time. And, and she dated different races, and then wound up, we got Ruben, and he was the last one she dated. And I think I liked him a lot because he liked the sports, and that's what I was into. And my other brothers, it was all right. My older brother, Tony, he left, for me. He was gone already because he was older already. The next one, they didn't get along that well. But me, I got along with him. I think that's the reason why my mom, felt comfortable at the time. And it worked out. And me growing up, I'm doing good. And I feel a lot of parents today, they forget that they used to be a kid. And then when they kids have kids who shouldn't have kids, because they say, young kids having kids, they don't teach teach his kids what's going on. Like me, I learned mainly, thank God he was there, my grandmother and all of them was around at the time. I learned from them, and then me growing up right now as a father, I know about, like she's saying, the hitting and all that stuff. I know that's wrong. My older brother talked to me and told me, when you have a kid, remember you don't do what mommy did about that hitting. That's not what's happening. You use your boys' talk first, and then go from there. And that's what I've been doing, learning from my older brother about that. And I think a lot of parents today they forgot. And that way of doing it, they feel that, well, my mom did it to me, I'm gonna do it to you, and they need to get out of that. And I think if they hear from somebody, the kids today hear from somebody who's been through it, and like me, and I don't know, the young lady who's there too, I think, I don't know, but it'll help them understand what's going on. Kids are having kids right now. That's why I look at it, and I think they have to have. I learned, like me, my son is 11. It wasn't for God and my mother-in-law. I mean, we'd have been struggling too, learning, but we learned. I learned a lot about it from her too. So it's everybody have to work together. Just like when we grew up, it was a family next door. The same thing got to happen now, and it's not happening, and that's the problem too. Yeah. But I'm gonna let you go because I've been talking too much, and Maggie, I will. I thank you for taking my call, and we'd like to try to hear what you're talking about after that.
All right. Thank you, Nathan, for calling.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, that's what he says. So many kids forget that they were children too, or so many
Absolutely.
adults. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one time, and when I was I was 11, we were living in Inglewood here in Chicago, South Side, and I remember I got in so much trouble, and in that moment when I was in my room crying, I said to myself, I will never forget what it's like to be 11.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have to remind myself of that. And as parents, we have to remind ourselves that even though we know in our conscious and rational mind that our parents really did the best they could with what they have, at some level we know that's just all they knew how to do, even though it hurt me and left me in some kind of way. The choice that we have to make as parents is to do something different with our own children. Yeah, and because of the lack of support, if you will, and I don't mean social service agencies. We have a lot of social service agencies that do good and fantastic work. I mean the lack of support that we grew up with seeing our parents have, which is aunts and uncles and extended family and people who were really, there when things got tough and would remove the kids and say, okay, well, we're going to go and you just take a minute, right? We've gotten away from the community in that way, and it's very individualistic now. So having people that we can talk with and then using also counselors and therapists, because that's really the direction that things have moved towards within our society and within our culture. And it's appropriate, being able to talk with someone objective who's not going to criticize you, but to help you figure things out for yourself. What's the best way for you to think about being a parent? What works for you that allows your child to blossom and to come into their own?
Right.
That's why the Cosby Show was so great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will continue with Mary, who's hanging online. So just hang on, Mary. We'll be with you in just a moment. And continue also with Jinnie Cristerna as we discuss preventing child abuse. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Maggie Linton Show on Sirius XM Urban View. We'll be right back. And now, let's join Maggie Linton on Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 110.
Well, welcome back. We continue our discussion on preventing child abuse with therapist Jinnie Cristerna, and she is a regular contributor, Cristerna. She is a regular contributor to Jet Magazine and jetmag.com. We've got Mary. Thank you so much for holding, Mary, from New Jersey. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I just had a question for the social work therapist that's on the phone. I remember earlier they were saying that if you're a single mom, or a single parent, rather, you may not be able to date. And I had two questions. The one was, so sometimes it seems like there's a little bit of a contradiction or it's unclear for married people. I'm actually married. But if you're trying to raise your children correctly, also married people, you have to put your relationship sort of aside for the sake of the children at the same time. And sometimes when people are always you're told, oh, you have to keep your marriage and your relationship in date, but because that's healthy for the kids. But if you're single, you have to put dating on hold for the kids. So I just think there's some clarity that needs to be put there. And then the other questions related to everything that you were saying was totally correct as far as the extended family being gone and people are going toward therapists and counselors. That's really good. And I was just wondering, just as with marriage counseling, there's like parenting counseling before you have kids, because like you were saying,
yeah.
have kids, have discussions about how you're going to raise children before you have the children. And you can have those discussions, but then when the children get here, the things change because you were preparing for one child because you thought based on how you are or your spouse is, but that's not the child you have. And so you have to raise the child you have versus the child you thought you were going to get. And so sometimes these things are not clear, and I was just wondering if you could shed light on that, and I can take my response offline.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Great questions.
Yeah, there was two, and so I hope you remembered both of them. I was trying to write them down and listen at the same time. I'm so sorry, Maggie,
No
but I'm sure you'll remember them. But the first thing that I do want to say is that is a fantastic set of questions. When you're talking about being single and dating, that is so very different than being married, because you're choosing to bring people into an existing situation. When you're married and you have children, that biological mother and father, they're going to be in that child's period. I don't care if you guys stay together or if you get divorced, but when you're married, the dynamic is actually a little different. You don't necessarily put aside the marriage for the children. What you do is you model through the marriage how children should behave. You model empathy. You actually are supposed to put the marriage first in that you guys are supposed to go on dates. You guys model how you talk with each other, how you fight. Because you teach kids how to fight, believe it or not. So it's good to have debate in the home and to see that all the way through to, the making up, if you will. So it's very different for married couples than it is for parents who are single. And there's another thing that I wanted to make a distinction between, Maggie, and that is there's a difference between being a single parent, right, and then a parent who is single. Because if you are a parent who is single and the other, if the other parent is involved, then you're not a single parent. You're a parent that's single. Now, if the other parent, the other biological parent is not involved, then you're, yes, a single parent. So there's a distinction between the two. I think, there was a time when you saw more single parents where the other parent was not involved. But now you're starting to see more men become involved, more mothers becoming involved, even if they don't have residential custody. So it's two very different types of parenting that started to emerge. And so you no longer have the single parent issue that we're only addressing. So with that said, I do want to just make sure that she understands that marriage is a lot different between two biological parents than that of a parent who is single or a single parent looking to date and bringing people into an established situation already, which is between the biological parent and their child.
Right. And the second one is no matter how much discussion you have, disciplining children as individuals rather than exactly the same for both. And that's kind of the norm, too. I mean, you really do, because children are different as we are as adults.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's why I tell people, parenting is probably the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest job to have because you have to be a therapist to some degree. You have to be a counselor. You have to be educated on, some type of developmental psychology, and you have to know yourself. Being a parent, and there's been tons of research and books written on it more at an academic level, but one of the things that most parents don't realize is that each child stirs up some unresolved issue from your childhood at that age. So when your 5-year-old is getting on your nerves, chances are at some point when you were 5, something got, either foreclosed or pushed away, and now it's coming back up again. So kids stir up things that are unresolved within us as a parent, and most parents don't even know that. All they know is that I don't like this feeling, I don't want to talk about it, and no, you cannot apply a cookie-cutter parenting solution to all of your kids. I have 4 children, Maggie, and I tell you, each one of them are different and take me to different brinks of hell, and then they bring me back, right? I might fall off, but they'll throw me a rope from time to time. But, it's just one of those things where parenting is really about the parent learning more about themselves and being curious about what's going on with their child while at the same time holding an unconditional love. So that is a lot. So if you as a parent feel overwhelmed, there's a good reason for that. And being able to talk with someone, going to parenting classes, those things are helpful. Right. Because it allows you to grow. It allows you to understand you.
Exactly. Learning how to parent is so important. We've got a call from George in California. Go ahead, George. Go ahead, George.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. I have a question for our guest. So back in the 90s, when working on my undergraduate for bachelor's in political science, I took this course called Methods and Methodology, and the basics of the course was to come up with a research topic and then write a paper on it. And so I chose a subject called child discipline, a taught or learned behavior. And my study group was basically undergraduate day and night, graduate day and night students, and then obviously the questions were across the board, age groups and gender and ethnicity and so forth. And then the result of the study was that the results were most kids at that time, and this was in the 90s, felt that they weren't parented properly, and that the dates and I students, which were mostly adults with kids, felt that they learned parenting like on the fly. And if they were spanked as a child, for example, they spanked their children. And now myself being a parent, everything I've learned has been what I went through as a child myself, and it kind of brought me back to, I was disciplined. I grew up in a very hard. I mean, my father was a real alpha male, and there was no slack with him. But my mom administered most of the discipline, but my dad was kind of the initiator, is what I called him.
The enforcer.
Yeah, right. And everything I learned as a parent came from them. And it wasn't until I started watching how intimidating I was with my own children that I had to say, wait a minute. It was like a human side of me just kicked in. It was like, I don't want to feel like I did at being afraid of my parents. And so it's changed over the years. It changed how I even parent my kids. I wonder what your take is on child discipline in that manner.
Jenny?
Well, I will tell you, I don't believe in sparing the rod to spoil the child by any means. I do believe in common sense. And sometimes, a smack on the butt or a smack on the hand, it's not going to hurt anyone and destroy them psychologically. Now, if you do it in excess and over every little thing and without going back and readdressing the issue, then, that's a problem. So I'm not the kind of therapist that will say you should never spank your kid. So, that will stir up, I'm sure, a whole bunch of emails coming to me about whatever, but, that's just where I stand on that. But at the end of the day, it really is about being your own self, being who you are and parenting from that place. If that was how your dad was, guess what? That is how your dad was, and it worked for you. That's not you. Each of us has to find our own voice. Each of us has to find our own self. And each of us has to find our own place in this world and give whatever we have that's the best that we have to our children. Hence, our parents did the best they could with what they have. We can't take a cookie cutter route and say, just because my parents did it, I'm going to do it. That's called cheating, because that's not your best self. That's not who you are as a parent. You as a parent are obligated to give your child the best part of you.
All right, George.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, we have Robert in San Diego. Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead, please, Robert.
Go ahead with my question.
Yes, please, with your question. Go ahead.
Oh, my question is, I'm in a relationship with this person that has a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. And because I have a daughter that's 17 and a son that's 21 from two different relationships. So when I'm with her, I feel some guilt of spending the time with the kids. So she's decided to move on because I guess she felt I wasn't, stepping up to the plate. But now that she's decided to move on, I'm feeling like I can step up to the plate. And, kind of like a bulb went off in my head. I want to do this. It's like, okay, you didn't do it for your kids. Here are two kids that you can try and raise. But I don't know if it's, long gone. If that relationship is already severed because I wasn't really stepping up to the plate. Been in a relationship for 2 years.
Yeah. It's hard when you're coming in as that other person, isn't it, Jenny?
It is. And, I do tell parents who are dating, you have to not only be clear, but you have to be realistic in what you're expecting your partner, the person that you're dating, whether you're a mother or a father. You have to be very realistic about what you can expect them to be comfortable coming in doing. Now, was it Robert? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
But for Robert, chances are he had to go through this with someone to decide or to come to terms with, being able to, quote unquote, step up to the plate. But, people don't come ready stepping up to the plate unless they've gone through something.
And also how much you're allowed by that other person to step up to the plate.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times, I have more than once seen someone turn to their partner that they're dating and say, well, you don't have the right to tell my kid what to do. And it's like, whoa, hold up. You just invited me into your house. I'm trying to become a part of the family, but I can't tell them what to do? That doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's our situation, too, because one of the things is I didn't grow up with a dad, and I don't know how that has affected me, but I just have some standards. I mean, her and I be laying we can be in the bed. One morning, her son he just opened the door. We weren't doing anything, but the son just opened the door and no good morning. I'm like, and she said to him, how come you didn't knock? He says, why I had to? And, so those things kind of, as a man, I'm like, if that's my biological boy and I'm in the bed with my wife, he's not going to just do that.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I don't know.
It's tough.
But I don't know if I should.
So here's the thing. If, say, for example, you were his biological father and she was the biological mother, he would walk in your room without knocking, and you would have to say, didn't I tell you not to just walk in here? So
right.
a lot of the stuff that kids do, they would do anyway. So remember what I said at the top of the hour, right? Kids kind of do developmentally what they do, and we as parents read into those things. We give meaning to those things. And oftentimes, that meaning is what we've projected from our shortcomings or from our needs and needing to feel respected, needing to feel validated, needing to feel whatever it is we're needing to feel. Because I'm going to put $50 on the table and tell you that if both of you were his biological parents, he would do the same thing. Your response to it would be quite different because you would have had a history. What's missing, and this is why this goes to the woman's point earlier, this is why I say when you're a married couple and you're the biological parents of a child, that relationship is so very different than when you're dating and you're bringing someone into the family. This is why mothers and fathers who are dating and bringing people in have to be very mindful of how they do that. Because they're acting as if, unfortunately, many of them, I shouldn't generalize, but many of them are acting as if the person should, come, it's ready to go. It's all assembled. We're going to pop you into this role, and you should just instinctively and intuitively know what to do and how to do it. And that's just not the case. Conversations need to be had around what do I expect as a parent, what's reasonable, what's realistic. And the person who's dating, the person who's not the biological parent, needs to be able to hear that. And sometimes it's not that conversation doesn't lead to a long-lasting relationship with that person, but it leads to several lessons that you can use in your next relationship, which may be the relationship that leads to something long-term.
Okay.
So should I, when I said to her that sometimes, I feel guilt. I'm with her kids. We're at dinner and
you know what? Keep the door open between you and your kids, though. Always keep the door open between you and your kids, and there's no need to feel guilt if you do that. Yeah. Okay.
Now can I ask him a question really quickly?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
What is it that makes you feel like you can't be a parent, you can't be a dad to your kids?
Well, let me just say this first of all. I'm in a rental car, and it's just amazing that I tuned into this station because my daughter is 17, and me and her mother have, we're not together, but each time I go to see her, like say for instance, she got inducted into the Honor Society last year as a junior in high school.
Oh, fantastic.
My friend now felt like, I'm spending family time with her. Oh, what are you trying to get back with her? And I said, no, that's, my daughter's birthday. I go up to Riverside from San Diego to see my daughter, and she felt like, you and her are still trying to get. I said, no, we're not trying to get together, but.
No, you're not trying to get together, but she's your daughter.
Right.
And you're trying to keep that door open. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the other person's issue. But
you know what's going on right now? I'm driving to Riverside for the first time, which is weird, to pick up my daughter. She's going to come spend 3 days with me. This is the first time we're doing that. Just me and her. So
So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take away two things from I know that one piece, because I know that you're driving and I just want to make sure I address these two things with you. I want you to walk away knowing, one, I don't care if you're a mother or father. If anyone that you're dating has a problem with your kids, you don't need to date them. If they're that insecure where they can't see that this is for my kid, that's just not going to work anyway.
Amen.
And if it does, you're going to have hell to pay, and it's not worth it. That's the first.
Because I said to her, look, I'm just going to see my daughter. We're going to.
You shouldn't feel guilty about that.
You shouldn't even have to explain that.
Mm-mm.
That's not even something that's up for discussion. So that's kind of, and that's one of those red flags, not that they'll hurt your child, but that, for you to be able to be a good parent to your kids, because she may want you to be a great father to hers, but you are a father to two other kids as well, right? So that's the one thing. The second thing I want you to take away from this is that you have an opportunity to go and not so much make it right or to get caught up, but to be able to move forward with your daughter and being able to, from a very genuine place, that moment that you two have a chance to really sit down and talk, apologize, and tell her how you feel and what you would like to be able to do with her, what kind of relationship you would like to have with her moving forward, and ask her if that's something she would like too. If she would like something a little different, it's kind of like a Burger King. What is it that you would like with me? Because believe it or not, and a lot of guys don't realize this, but you teach her how to allow another man to treat her. You teach her what her self-worth is, because the way my father treats me is okay for another man to treat me. So your job as she's becoming a young lady and moving into the world is to let her know that this is how a man is supposed to treat you. This is what you look for in a man. And that's the conversation over the next 3 days that not only you have with her, but you share with her as a father, because you are the only one she will have. I don't care if you haven't seen her for the first 17 years of your life. You do your best to let her know moving forward you love her, you apologize for whatever, and this is what you would like to have with her, and invite her to have that conversation with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you, Robert, and good luck and God's blessings. Hey, listen, folks, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Marcus from D.C., so stay tuned. We'll be right back with Jinnie Cristerna.
You're listening to the Maggie Linton Show on Sirius XM Urban View. We'll be right back. And now, let's join Maggie Linton on Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 110.
Welcome back. We continue now with licensed clinical social worker, psycho and hypnotherapist Jinnie Cristerna, and we're going to go direct to Marcus from Washington, D.C. Go ahead, Marcus.
Yep.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I want to know if there was a correlation between children that were spanked or slightly, hit for discipline reasons, and more aggression with them, with other children, like, say, on the playground and Howard Stern's penis.
Oh, it's one of those guys. Stupid question. Okay. Thanks, Marcus. Right now, we're going to go on. You can answer that if you'd like. But
I didn't understand the question. Is there a correlation between
children who get who are spanked, and then those who more aggression on the playgrounds, and abuse on with other children? And I was spanked, and I sure am not aggressive.
Well, it depends. That's an interesting question, because one of the things is that we know that kids will act out abuse and become bullies. So if it's emotional, physical, or psychological, and it really depends, on the child, and it really depends on the situation in the home and how the parenting overall is. So there's a lot of factors. So there's no direct correlation, although we do know that bullies are often abused in some way, shape, or form. So that we do know.
Right. All right. Cece from Texas. Go ahead, Cece. Cece. Cece? Cece? All right. I think she got out of the car. All right. We're going to go on to, is it Conley in Virginia? Go ahead, Conley.
Hey, Miss Linton.
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Good,
thank you.
yeah.
I just happened on that conversation that you had with the other brother talking with the child coming into a home and he's not biological or something to that fact.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got the same situation going. My wife passed away in 2009, and we have 3 boys. She passed away. I sent my kids to live with my mother and father because I couldn't, they were young. I couldn't leave them at home while I worked or anything like that. Now, this young lady that I date right now that lives in my home with me, she has a daughter. And now she's from a marriage that was divorced, and the daughter doesn't know the father. She actually calls me daddy or whatever. And I don't have a problem with that, and I don't force it. The issue that I butt heads with my significant other is the issue on discipline. Now, of course, again, I have 3 boys, so with boys, you kind of got to be a little bit stern. I have a mentality like, look, I don't show no favoritism. I don't spare the rod for anything. But every time we get into issues with discipline, and I'm like, look, you want to do this, or you need to get into her a little bit more. It always seems to be an issue, and it's almost getting to the point like when the young girl is in preschool or whatever, and I go to pick her up, and she gets these little notices that she was put in time out, that she's being disrespectful or whatever. It's almost getting to the point with me that I don't even want to say anything or want to go out, and I kind of want to go hands off. I'm like, okay, that's your daughter. Go ahead and do what you want. My question is, there another way you think of approach that that I should try to go and deal with this situation or anything like that?
Yeah, this is a great question, Maggie, because this comes up a lot, even in households where the biological parents are together. And this is what I was alluding to a little bit ago. Being mindful of what you do and making sure that it makes sense for each child, because you can't do the same thing with each child. And, again, it really becomes an issue of why are you doing it. So the other thing that I would say to answer your question more directly is watch the prosody in your voice. And prosody just means the music in your voice. So it's not what you say, but how you say it. We don't want our children to fear us. That's not healthy. We want them to respect us. We want them to look up to us because, remember, children, we're their first hero. We're the ones that they look up to regardless. So we don't really have to make them afraid of us. They don't want to let us down. So if anything, I would suggest mirroring, which is letting that child know what they are really good at doing and kind of redirecting that behavior in a way that's going to be healthier. And then also, consider trying to sit down and talk about, what is going on with that child, so you get a better understanding of what's happening with him or her, because it's not as clear cut as it seems when we're a parent. You're just acting out, so stop it. It's not about us stopping it. It's there for a reason. Something is going on. And as a parent, just give yourself the patience to try to figure out what that is.
Yeah. And also keep the door open with your kids and your sons and tell them you love them on a regular basis, too.
Absolutely.
Okay,
because
Conley?
boys need that more.
Right. Okay, Conley?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good luck. We've got Cece is back from Texas. Go ahead, Cece.
Hi, good morning. I love your show, and I only get to hear it a little bit, and this is the first time I've ever been able to hear it early in the morning. But this is what I wanted to say. I grew up in that era where supposedly your aunts and your uncles and so forth all contributed to helping raise you. I don't know if that worked out for everybody else, but it certainly did work out in my case. I came from a severely abused background, and I'm talking about beatings plus sexual abuse. I'm much older now, and I have to tell you that the only thing that really saved me was the fact that when I had my son, I realized I did not want to parent him the way I had been parented. So I turned around and went to therapy on my own. It was not easy, and it took me years to overcome what I had come from. And what I want to say along with that is that I don't believe that spanking a child occasionally or spanking them on the hand is bad, because when I did try to raise my son the opposite way completely with no spanking, no punishment, well, I ran into a lot of problems when he became a teenager. And because I didn't have a set discipline mode for him, and the person I married, we were not on the same sheet of music. So I'm saying that in essence that you have to have discipline, but you have to also be on the same sheet of music. And for those people who have been abused or beaten, get therapy, because without it you can't survive. Even to this day, as old as I am, I still have a lot of that in my head. It's something that never ends. You know,
Absolutely.
Well, I'm so glad you called back, Cece, because this is an important topic. We've only got a little less, about a minute and a half, Jenny, so go ahead and address this, please.
Yeah, one of the things that, I see a lot, unfortunately, in more minority communities is that there's not a willingness or desire to go and seek help from a therapist. And I really hope that everyone who is listening, if you've been abused, if you're a parent especially, go talk to somebody. Please go talk to somebody, because I promise you that it's there. Something is there, and it's influencing the way not only that you parent, but the way that you see the world, the way that you see yourself, the way that you understand what's going on around you. We are what we bring to this world. And at the end of the day, it can't be everyone else in the world. It's statistically impossible for everyone else in the world to be the problem. So I really encourage people, to take heed to the last caller, because even after therapy, it's not that it goes away. You just become more aware of it, and you have more tools to deal with what is in your history, because that's part of who you are.
Okay.
Make it something great.
All right. Thank you so much for all your calls today. Once again, many thanks to licensed clinical social worker, psycho, and hypnotherapist Jinnie Cristerna. She's a regular contributor at Jet Magazine and jetmag.com. Find out more at her website, highachiever.net. Once again, that's highachiever.net. Also, lots of great information there. Thanks also to Helen Oyeyemi and Dr. Carol Swain. Tomorrow, renowned psychic, playwright, and author Patricia McLean. Plus, we're going to talk business too, folks. Many thanks to Quentin Hill. Seek peace and spread lots of love. I'm Maggie